get started with this story about Cornel West. Now, first of all, before I bring up the interview, I want you to understand how significant this is. Cornel West, third party candidate. He's been on CNN. He's been on Fox News. I'm not sure about MSNBC, but he has also now been on Meet the Press. And I really do believe that this is the difference when you have a third party candidate that is popular, that people know, versus when you have a candidate that people don't know, they haven't heard of before. Mark my words, had Jesse Ventura run in 2020, third party as well, he would also be getting this same type of attention, because it's kind of hard to ignore the people that are well known. It's kind of hard to ignore a Jesse Ventura. It's kind of hard to ignore Cornel West, right? So this is exactly what we wanted when we talk about breaking away from the duopoly. We want someone who's going to get the media attention. They can't ignore him like they've done other third-party candidates. So, of course, they questioned Dr. West. Why are you doing this, Dr. West? You might help out Donald Trump. Why are you doing this? Well, I think that Dr. West delivered a great response. Let's get into it.
The third rail of a third-party ticket. I'll talk to Green Party candidate Cornel West about his bid for the White House amid growing anxiety among Democrats that a third-party challenger like him could spoil President Biden's re-election chances in 2024. But first, a special programming announcement. Make sure to tune in tomorrow night for a Meet the Press special following the first Republican debate, with live analysis, reporting, interviews, and much, much more. That's at 11 p.m. Eastern right here on NBC News Now. We'll be right back with more Meet the Press Now, live from Milwaukee.
Sorry, here we
won't be the only big names on your ballot next November. As we've reported, the group No Labels is gaining ballot access across the country and is considering running a moderate third-party candidate if President Biden and former President Trump are the Democratic and Republican Party nominees. Joe Manchin and Jon Huntsman have both been floated as possible independent candidates on that ticket. And Cornel West, professor, political activist, and former Bernie Sanders presidential backer, is seeking the Green Party's presidential nomination. And joining me now is Green Party presidential candidate and Union Theological Seminary professor, Cornel West. Thank you so much, Professor West, for being here. Really appreciate it.
What a blessing. And I salute you in this wonderful new job, so very well deserved. It's beautiful to see you flowering and flourishing, I should say, from Harvard Yard to now Meet the Press. That's beautiful.
See, it's really hard to clap back at that. That's the thing. Cornel West is friendly. Like, obviously, he's respectful. It doesn't matter what show he goes on to. He respects the people that he's talking to. He's not, calling them names or anything like that. But it makes it really difficult for you to dislike him, even if you're on corporate media. That's important. Look at her. She's smiling. Right? Let's continue.
Thank you, Professor West. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. And thank you for being here. We do want to talk to you about your candidacy, which has gotten a lot of attention. And I want to start off by asking you about it in this context. Your longtime political ally, Senator Bernie Sanders, he's not a Democrat, but he did, as you know, run twice in the Democratic presidential primary. So let me just put the question to you. Why have you decided to run as a third party candidate rather than a Democrat challenging President Biden?
Yes, Bernie Sanders, as you know, is my very dear brother. I have a deep love for him. We have disagreement at this historical moment. I'm thoroughly convinced that neither party is speaking to the pressing needs of poor and working people. And so the two-party system itself is becoming an impediment for the flowering of American democracy. We've got too many fellow citizens, 63% living paycheck to paycheck. And many of us know exactly what that means, no matter how big or small our check actually is. And so in that sense, I must say that it's hard to view oneself as a spoiler when there's increasing rot in the system with two parties connected to big money, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and militarism abroad. And we need, and really the anthem of Black people, lift every voice. We need many, many more voices, and the two parties that we have are too narrow at this point.
Did you notice what he did? He criticized both parties at the same time and connected both of them to the military industrial complex and the corporate greed. That's how you do it. You show the similarities, especially if you're a third party independent. You come out there and you show the similarities between the two parties. Hey, these parties aren't as much different as you guys think. They're similar in certain ways, and let me explain to you how. Wrap it all up as corruption. They're both corrupt. It's hard to push back on that because where's the lie? You can't push back and say, oh, no, they don't support the military, because they do. You can't push back and say, oh, no, they don't take corporate money, because they do. And those are things that everybody knows for the most part, right? Whether you vote or you don't vote. So that part is important to explain and to differentiate yourself between Bernie Sanders without smearing Bernie Sanders. So Cornel West definitely took this approach different than I would have, because I probably would have just been like, yeah, Bernie just does not have the guts to do what needs to be done, you know? But Cornel West is able to do this in such a way to say, well, yes, you know, that is someone that is a friend of mine, but I have to do what I feel is right. And just because we were on that Bernie campaign together, that doesn't mean that I'm going to follow every move that Bernie Sanders did. At the end of the day, he's his own person. And I think it's important to make that distinction. Let's continue.
Well, I'm curious because you say this is a moment where you're not necessarily seeing eye to eye with your good friend, Senator Bernie Sanders. Have you spoken to him about your candidacy? As you know, he's already endorsed President Biden.
No, we've had no dialogue. I can feel his love at a distance. I hope he can feel my love at a distance. But no, we've had no dialogues about it. Not at all. And as you know, I was very close to him for two campaigns. And I just don't think the Democratic Party treated him fairly. They didn't treat him justly. The Democratic Party was too anti-democratic. And I think both establishments in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party, they are undergoing a slow erosion. I think one of the reasons why you get a Trump is because the Democratic Party establishment has eroded. I think you're going to see it in many ways in the debate tomorrow night. You know, we just don't have the high quality. So you end up with a lot of Pied Piper language at Trump, but he's in so many ways beneath mediocrity, God bless him. And then with Biden, you've got milquetoast mediocrity. Where are the great visionary statespersons that come in and intervene as this country is undergoing polarization and gangsterization? In the name of integrity, honesty, decency, and generosity, we have got to have new voices on the scene. That's why I'm running for president.
Let me interject here for just a second. Did you notice what else he just did there? He explained to the American people, and a lot of people watch Meet the Press. My grandma used to watch this too. He explained to the American people that the Democratic Party gave you Donald Trump. And I think more people need to hear that, because let's be real. We cannot forget the American voters that voted for Barack Obama twice and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump. And those voters do exist. And you have to ask, why would that be? Why would they turn from Obama, who's Democrat, to Donald Trump? They were complete opposites, but it's because the needs of the American people were not being met. And we had 2 terms of Barack Obama. So that needs to be said. And he didn't even have to say Barack Obama's name, but let's be real. We can all put the two together and we all know who was president before Donald Trump. So you got to make that connection. And I think that was important for him to make that connection. Also, something else that I noticed that she tried to do. Have you spoken to Bernie Sanders since? Has anything? He's your good friend. You haven't heard from him. But notice how Cornel West responded. That was an easy chance for someone like Cornel West to be like, no, I haven't heard from him. Yeah, I can't believe he endorsed Joe Biden. He should be contacting me. You can take this in different ways. But this is something I think that Cornel West is really good at. Not everyone is good at this. I'm just going to keep it real, because it's easy to fall into that trap and to start saying negative things about Bernie Sanders. Maybe that's not really relevant at that point in time. But what Dr. West is able to do, he's able to answer the question without throwing Bernie Sanders under the bus. You see the difference? Because if he would have thrown Bernie Sanders under the bus, which is what I think she might have been trying to get him to do, then it kind of makes you look some kind of way after you just called him your friend. Next thing you know, there's more drama in the press. Cornel West calls Bernie Sanders a this and a this and a that. So he knows how to answer those types of questions the right way. It's kind of hard to come back with that.
Let me ask you about your past position. In 2004, you signed a letter of former Ralph Nader advisors urging progressives in swing states to vote for John Kerry. I'm going to read you a little bit of this letter that you signed. Quote, "This year, we urge support for Kerry Edwards in all swing states, even while we strongly disagree with Kerry's policies on Iraq and other issues. For people seeking progressive social change in the United States, removing George W. Bush from office should be the top priority in the 2004 presidential election. Progressive voters for John Kerry in swing states may prove decisive in attaining this vital goal."
Let me pause here for a second. So now what she's trying to do is she's trying to make it seem like it's a bad thing that he evolved. People change. I've changed politically over the years. Hell, I voted for Barack Obama. A lot of you watching voted for Barack Obama. She's going all the way back to, this is 2004, September 14, 2004. She's going all the way back to 2004. And that was almost over 20 years ago. So you're not allowed to have any type of political evolution within almost 20 years. You see what they do? Like, this is what we have to realize. And I've seen people do this on social media too. And I think this is something that needs to change. Not everybody is going to move politically when we move. Some people may be latecomers. Some people may be ahead of you. But what you don't do is you don't go back and shame them and say, but in 2004, you said this politically. It was almost 20 years ago. You know what happens in that span of a time? People have kids. People get married. People move. People change careers within almost 20 years. So much can happen within your life and your political thinking in that amount of time. But this is supposed to be a gotcha moment. But it's not really a gotcha moment. Listen to this.
If you believed that in 2004, Dr. West, how do you rationalize your third-party candidacy this time around?
Well, it's a wonderful question because, as you know, I supported Brother Biden, given my profound disagreements with Biden as architect of mass incarceration, as supporter of invasion and occupation of Iraq. Why? Because I was thoroughly convinced that what the Republicans were presenting was so dangerous. But the sad thing is now is that as dangerous as a second Trump term would be, if we don't break out of the corporate duopoly, we're going to be doing this for the next 10, 20, and 30 years. And I don't think the American project can withstand it. This shift from Democrats to Republicans, Democrats feeding the Republicans, Republicans feeding the Democrats, and yet poor people, working people, finding themselves pushed to the margins. It could be Cop City, both parties support. It could be expansion of military budget, both parties support. It could be policies advantageous to Wall Street, both parties support. And as you know, this is the 60th anniversary of Brother Martin Luther King's great speech. And I've always viewed myself as my own humble calling, trying to keep alive the great legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and Diane Nash. And that tradition has to continue on and on. I think of Les McCann's great classic, compared to what, 1969? Compared to what at this point with these parties? Let's try something new.
And I have to say here as well, this whole idea that now is not the time, we need to wait. No. We could get Trump. If not Trump, it'll be someone else. And they'll continue to use this type of rhetoric. No. Might get DeSantis, might get Trump, might get Mike Pence, there's always going to be a might get someone else. But it's just, I think back to the civil rights movement, and I'm trying to think about what would Martin Luther King have said to the people who said, no, we can't boycott now. We can't march in the streets now. We can't allow ourselves to be beaten, to be jailed. We can't deal with all this. Not now is not the time. We need to wait a little bit. Where would we all be today? Where would we be? Where would we be if it wasn't for, we talk about the RBN chapters that we all started. We talk about mutual aid. We talk about community organizing. What would have happened if the Black Panthers, if people like Fred Hampton would have listened to the naysayers who told him, no, now is not the time? Because here's the thing, guys, there's always going to be a naysayer, and there's always going to be the people that tell you now is not the time. And the people that come to you and tell you now is not the time, those are people speaking from fear. They're not speaking from empowerment. They're not speaking from encouragement. They're not trying to encourage you. They're not trying to uplift you. They're not trying to push your idea forward. They are afraid. And so they are trying to push their fear onto you. And what do we do with that? What do we do when people try to push their fears onto us? We push back, and we push back harder, and we shake it off. Don't let people do that to you. Do not let people try to put their fear onto you, because then you just end up with a mass of fearful people who sit by and years later look back and say, man, maybe we should have gone ahead and gave it a try. Maybe we should have done it. Don't fall into that. You don't want to be the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. So there'll always be the now is not the time people. There's always going to be people who are afraid. But you don't think during the civil rights movement, those activists, some of them weren't afraid? You don't think the people who got on the buses, the freedom riders who got on the buses, you don't think they were afraid driving through the South during that time that they may be beaten or they could be killed? You don't think they were afraid? You cannot let fear control you to the point where you will not try to do something that is challenging because you are afraid of what is going to happen on the other side. And I'm speaking from personal experience. You cannot let that happen. Let's continue.
Dr. West, as you know, though, if you look back throughout history, third-party candidates have at times made the difference in presidential elections, including in 2016, when in some key states, Jill Stein, for example, seemed to make a difference. Would you be okay if at the end of the day, the vote totals came back, you stayed through the entire race, and it was clear that your candidacy helped deliver former President Trump another term in office?
Hillary Clinton was the difference. You know, I don't like people blaming people like Jill Stein and third party and independent candidates. If Hillary Clinton had actually campaigned in the Rust Belt and spoke to the people like they were people and not like they were beneath her, maybe those people would have voted for Hillary. But let's be real. All these pundits who are blaming people like Jill Stein and any other third party candidates, they need to put that blame right back onto Hillary Clinton. All the people who blame like Ralph Nader, they need to put that blame right back onto, who was the guy? Oh, Al Gore, right? Because the thing is this, if you are strong and you are a strong candidate and your message is reaching a lot of people, then the third party and the independent candidate are not going to affect you anyway. Were there not third party and independent candidates when Barack Obama ran in 2008 and he won by a landslide, right? Let's remember, it is Hillary Clinton's fault that she did not find a way to reach working class people, poor people, and honestly, even some of the black people that said they were going to show up for Hillary when it came time to vote, stayed home. So when you go on to talk shows and you go on to like the Breakfast Club and you try to pretend like you're down with the homies and you say stupid shit like, I got that hot sauce in my bag, people see right through you. When you ignore people that live in these industrial towns that the country has forgotten about, and they have had their jobs taken away from them because of policies like NAFTA, and you ignore those people, or when you do get to speak to those people, you talk down to those people as though they are beneath you, you are the reason that you lost. Not Jill Stein, not all these other people who were in the race that was solely on Hillary Clinton, because she entered that campaign with such a sense of snobbery. And there's a sense of, she's prudish in a way, that how dare she have to be on the debate stage with Donald Trump? How dare he even make it to that point with all of my experience and my education and my knowledge? This shouldn't even be happening. That attitude is what turns a lot of people off from liberals and the Democratic Party. That attitude. So if you ignore working people, they'll remember to ignore you when it's time to vote.
Well, the vast number of voters who would vote for a Green Party and myself either would not vote at all or would never, ever, ever vote for Biden or Trump. And that's very important to keep in mind, because there's this narrative, I think it's a false narrative, thinking that somehow they're choosing between Biden and myself. No, not really. They've given up on Biden. What is it now? 48% of our precious fellow citizens do not vote at all, my dear sister. That's not a good sign in a democracy that's already in decay. That's not a good symptom of a democracy already experiencing a kind of decadence. We've got to bring new people in, and neither party is really interested in speaking to that 48% that has given up on American democracy.
100%. And I'm glad he said to her that the people who are going to vote for like Cornel West or any third party candidate, those people are not going to vote for a Trump or a Biden anyway. We have to continue to say that, because mainstream media, they continue to say their narrative that those candidates are giving the race over to Trump. So we have to continue to say our message. We have to continue to stay on course, let them know we wouldn't vote for those candidates anyway.
What do you say to your fellow progressives, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator John Fetterman, who've expressed their real concerns about a third-party candidacy? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, quote, "It's very difficult to square the very real threat of a Republican presidency with the risk of giving up the very small margin of electoral votes needed to ensure that President Biden wins." John Fetterman says, "I fundamentally believe that you don't mess around with the kinds of highest stakes we're dealing with. Can you just imagine what a second term of Trump would be? It's all going to be about revenge."
You know what this shows you about AOC and John Fetterman, I told you guys, is not progressive. I wish they would stop calling him that. But what this shows you about AOC and John Fetterman is that these people, they're just regular Democrats. That's it. That's all they are. They talked a lot when Trump was in office, but the moment that Joe Biden won that White House, they fell right in line. That's all it is. These people are not going to fight for you. These people are not going to fight. AOC won't even show up to a march for Medicare for all. John Fetterman, these people are not going to be out in the streets with us. When a real revolution happens in this country, and I do believe it will happen, it will not be televised. But I'll tell you one thing, I wouldn't expect those people to be there. I wouldn't expect those people to be out in the streets. Cornel West has been out in the streets. Cornel West has been there to protest against issues, even when the issues were not popular. And he's been arrested during protests because of that. AOC and John Fetterman, nah.
What do you say to your fellow progressives who are expressing deep concerns about a third-party candidacy?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is that 1 out of 8 of the voters for Trump voted for Bernie Sanders. See, the Trump followers are not homogeneous and monolithic. If you can speak to their pain, if you can speak to their frustration, they will never vote for Democrats. But many of them would be open to those who are speaking to their needs. They don't have to follow the Pied Piper, the neo-fascist Pied Piper with Trump. A new vision, a different alternative can convince a significant number of them. And so, again, I'm resisting the notion that somehow it's just a matter of myself and Brother Biden that people are choosing between. No, we've got large numbers of non-voters who are interested, especially young people. Look at the percentage of young people. Only 20-some% participate at all. I want to speak to those young folk. I want to try to galvanize their energy.
Especially in the primary campaigns. I don't know if everyone's aware, but in the primary elections, whether it's Democrat primary or Republican primary, younger people are more likely to sit those out. Bernie Sanders changed some of that. Like when Bernie was running, that kind of energized a lot of younger people like, oh, I'm going to go vote in a primary for like the first time in my life, right? But for usually the most part, younger people are more likely to sit those out.
Dr. West, I'm getting a hard rap, so just yes or no. Are you in this until the very end, or is there a chance you'll reconsider at some point and potentially drop out?
Well, I am a jazz man, you know that, but I intend to be in it to the very end because it's not just about, it's not about this particular election only. It's about a larger movement. We've got to break the two-party system, and to do it is now. And if we don't do it now, we'll find ourselves back and forth with this swing between the fascists on the one hand and the neoliberals on the other.
All right. Professor Cornel West, thank you.
See, she couldn't push back. You guys notice that? How can you push back on that? We have to break away from this system.
Thank you so much for your time and your perspective. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Salute you. Salute you.
See, she's smiling like she knows what's up. She knows what's up. Now, I want to talk about something here. I want to show you something. I think I can play it on here. Yeah, I think I can play it on here. I want to show you a Trump supporter. Now, remember what Cornel West just said about Trump supporters, you know, not being homogenous, right? So we want to be careful about putting people in boxes, right? All right, let me show you something. We are taking people out of the box. And Corey, I forgot to put this in there, but I'm doing it now. So I'm sorry. I wasn't going to do this one at first, but I changed my mind. Sorry. Welcome to Sabby Live, where anything can change. All right. I want you to hear from a Trump supporter because we don't want to put people in boxes, right? Listen to this. This guy wants to vote for Trump. Listen.
I'm here to support President Trump. You want to know why I'm here to support President Trump? Because they done did black men like this for decades. Make up charges and put them, so I know Trump is innocent. I support Trump against this corrupt, two-tiered justice system. That's why I'm here to show my support as a black man for Trump. And I'm wearing my shirt, Niggas for Trump 2024, and I mean that.
Now, does he look like your average Trump supporter? See why you can't put people in boxes? Let him finish. He gets funny later on.
What do you think about the indictments?
Oh, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's going around the country. You know, Fannie Willis, she went to school with my sister. She full of shit. She was full of shit then. So she's a puppet for the white liberal that is controlling everything. She's in front, but the white liberal back there pulling those strings, telling her what to do. That's what I think about her, making a fool of herself.
Do you think it's going to help his election?
Of course it is. It's going to elevate him all the way. I think we should make Trump king. That's how I feel. We should make him king.
Wouldn't that be like kind of like communistic?
Nah, that's nowhere near communist. Now we just going to make him king, but we still got our freedoms and rights for everything. He for that. Yeah, Trump for king 2024.
That's actually my URL. I own that URL.
Funny, huh? So again, they're not all the same. All Trump voters aren't the same, and we can't just continue to put people in boxes. Just something to think about. Go ahead and smash that like button, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so.